everyone. My name is Beth Stanifor-Seamster, and I am the Children's Ministry Coordinator at Whitewater Area Regional Ministry in Whitewater, Wisconsin. I hope that everyone is having a great day. I am here to do my weekly family ministry lesson, which I usually put out on Wednesdays. So I'll say happy Wednesday, even if you're watching this on a different day. Well, as you know, this semester, we have been focusing on the great cloud of witnesses, people who have loved God and who have shown God's love in the world. We know that when you do those two things, when you love God and love your neighbor, you make a difference in the world. And so each person we've learned about has made a difference in some way, either in their small towns, larger communities, country, or even the world. This is actually our last witness that we're going to be talking about this semester. Next week, we'll talk about Christmas, and then we'll be taking a break. So our witness this week is a woman by the name of Clara Brown, also known as Aunt Clara Brown. And she was born around the year 1800. We don't know exactly when. I've seen 1800, 1802. Clara was born as a slave in Virginia. And when she was 3 years old, she and her mother were sold to a man named George Brown. And that's where she lived most of her life, was on his plantation or on his farm. When she was 18, she married her husband, Richard, and they had 4 children. But just a few years later, so around the time when she was about 35 years old, her family was separated. They were all sold. I believe she remained, but her daughter and son, the rest of her children and her husband were all sold. And she spent the rest of her life looking for her family, trying to find them. When her owner died in 1856, she was allowed the chance to buy her freedom. And so she was able to. It took a lot of hard work. I can't imagine being a slave, being expected to work for free every day, all day, and then having time at the end to do jobs for pay. She must have been exhausted. But she did. She bought her freedom. And in the year 1859, she made the decision to go to Colorado. She wanted to go to Colorado. She thought that perhaps one of her children, her daughter Eliza Jane, was in Colorado. So there was some personal motivation there. But she also, I think, was just ready for a new adventure. Colorado was, there was a gold rush going on, and there's kind of this pioneer sense of going out and exploring. Now, because she was a woman and because she was a Black woman, she was not allowed to ride in the carriage with the white folks or these different things. She didn't have the money she needed to pay for a ticket. So she approached a group and asked if she could go and be a person who, did the laundry, cooked the meals, and helped with different things on the journey. And they agreed. And I actually have a book about her, so I thought I might read a little blurb from it in a couple different spots. So this book is called Aunt Clara Brown, Official Pioneer, and it's by Linda Lowry. But it talks about her journey. And it says, she was not allowed to ride in the wagons. Each day she walked beside the oxen. At night, the men argued about whether slaves should be free. They argued about where Clara should sleep. Should she sleep in the wagons with the other women? Should she sleep outside with the cattle? The men did not know Clara's mother had been a Cherokee Indian. Had they known, it would have been worse for Clara. She ended up sleeping on the ground under a wagon. She walked 680 miles to get to Colorado with this group. Can you imagine? She must have been so determined to get there. When she got there, she made the decision to set up a laundry. She went to a town, it was called Central City, Colorado. It was very small. It was it's kind of like a frontier town. And she went and set up shop as a person who would do laundry. And since a lot of the miners there were single men who maybe didn't know how to do their laundry or didn't have time to do their own laundry, she made a lot of money. So much money that in just a few years, she was able to buy land in multiple places in Colorado. And at one point, she owned 7 houses in Central City, Colorado. I would imagine she rented them as a way to make more money. But when the Civil War ended in I'm gonna look at my notes here, 65, she had about $10,000, which was a lot of money in those days. But she still had not found any of her family and felt this big gaping hole in her life. And so because the Civil War was ended and slaves were free to leave the plantations or workplaces they were at, she went back. She decided to go to Kentucky to look for her children, especially her daughter, Eliza Jane. And when she went from place to place to place, but could not find anyone from her family. And really was just heartbroken about this. And so what she decided to do, she prayed, because God had always been this strong presence in her life and been a stabilizing force for her. She prayed and asked God what she should do. And God responded with the idea that she should create a new family for people that looked like her and looked like her daughter, Eliza Jane. Parents who couldn't find their kids who couldn't find their parents, and bring them with her back to Colorado. And so that's what she did. She looked at her financial situation and realized that she had enough money to bring 26 people back to Central City, Colorado with her. And that's what she did. And not just making them walk the way that she did, she hired coaches and transportation specifically for them. When they got there, she helped them create businesses and homes and really gave these 26 folks a chance to start over and start something new. So we see that really living out God's call, believing in God, asking God for guidance. And then the response was to go and support God's people. And so she did that. Over the course of her life, she ended up losing a lot of her money. I think she was swindled, some bad investments, things like that. And when the time came that she was old and should have been able to retire, the state of Colorado would pay a pension, which was like a monthly payment, to people who had come out and helped to settle the state, helped to pioneer the state, but they would only pay it to white men. And so many people felt strongly that Clara Brown had really made such a big impact for the state that they wrote to their congressmen people and they wrote letters in the newspaper until finally she was awarded a pension. She was the first non-white man to earn a pension in the state of Colorado. Well, as she was aging and getting older, she still had not found any of her family members. And in the year 1883, she received a letter from an old friend. And the letter said that this woman had met a woman whose name was Eliza Jane, who had been sold away from her parents at about the age of 10 or 11 and had never been reunited with them. And parts of the story matched parts of Clara's story. And so her friend Becky said, you need to get here. You need to come to Council Bluffs, Iowa, as soon as you can and meet this woman. And she didn't have any money. Clara didn't have the money to make the trip. But again, this family she had created and all these people that she had loved and the love she had given to the world came back to her. And so people helped her pay to go to Council Bluffs to see if this was in fact her daughter. And it turns out that it was. So for the last 2 years of her life, she was reunited with her daughter, Eliza Jane, and Eliza Jane had a daughter as well. They went back to Colorado together, and Clara Brown was honored as an important figure in the history of the state of Colorado, and she died in 1885. So really an interesting woman, brave and courageous and strong, and really centered on loving God and loving her neighbor. So that is the story of our witness for this week, Clara Brown, or Aunt Clara Brown. I hope you enjoyed it, and there's some activities you can look at in the pages below. And if you're still interested, you can Google, check her out yourself. She's a really interesting lady. So blessings. Have a wonderful week.